All right. Hi, everyone. It's about time we get started. Welcome to Script Doctor. Metroid Other M. Can everyone hear me pretty clearly? All right, cool. I've got a lot to say and not a lot of time to say it, so I'm going to get right started. But real quick, a little bit about... Oh. Your doctor. Hi, everybody. Hi, I'm Nikki Simke. You might remember me from such panels as Samus vs. Ridley, a Metroid Historia, and from such cosplays as Metroid Dread Gravity Suit and Elec Man. So, you might be asking, why bother doing this? The short answer is, and the longer answer is that we all agree it's easier to just wipe this game from the Metroid canon, but Samus deserves a little more effort than that. She's considered by many to be one of Metroid's tertiary mascots alongside Link and Mario, but she doesn't have quite as much of a span of games as they do, and erasing one of them kind of just makes a large hole in the series. So I think it's more worth it to give her a perfectly flawless timeline of perfect games that we only have time to handle one thing, and we're going to deal with something mainline anyway. Besides, this is a game where I think we can agree where one of the most egregious problems with it is all in the story and the writing. And gameplay, now that's not something I really know how to fix because I'm no game designer, but I can try and fix up a story. And I think if we could at least just do that, then maybe Other M would be a little bit more worthy of existing in Samus's long line here. So, with that, it's no better place to get started than to start at the very beginning. So I'm going to just, start the game, see where we can make our first change. Nope. Hold up. I got this. I've always been doing this. One more time. Sorry, folks. All right, well, that's not working, so I'm just going to have to describe it to you. In the very beginning of the game, we open up to an image of Samus as a fetus and then a young child floating in space. And that already feels a little weird to me. Because we don't really know what exactly it's supposed to mean yet, do we? And I think it might help if we could make this image a little more concrete. Now, we've had plenty of other instances of the image of Samus curled up in a ball, floating in seemingly nothingness many times, largely in regards to when she was imbued with the Chozo DNA. And I think maybe if we could have at least had that image of her floating in space made more concrete by perhaps having it clearly in a tube or in a crystal flash or in something or surrounded by Chozo. And I think that might already be an improvement to, bring this game off to a stronger start. Now, in fact, this sort of imagery is even present in fan art here, like this one. And I just want to bring this up because, I love this art, but it's also a good note for where I'm going to be going with this for the rest of this workup. All right, so. Now, yeah. Now, I remember rewatching this game and being immediately pained by a lot of the writing they had for Samus and her monologues. And I know I called this Script Doctor, but I do only have an hour, so I can't take the time to rewrite everything line by line. However, we can agree that there's this one term here needs a little bit of fixing, either in the frequency of it or maybe just tweaking the wordage just a little bit. I'm genuinely curious, did anyone here ever call this thing, did you call it just the baby, or did you call it the baby Metroid, or what? Infant Metroid, baby Metroid. Yeah. Now see, so yeah, and I think if there was an issue of we had to call it like a one-word thing, if we have to be weird like that, perhaps even an improvement would have simply been hatchling, because it's a term that we have seen used by the Chozo to describe Samus when she was young, and she would probably be familiar with that term herself. It could be something that Chozo used to call all small things, because they're birds and they hatch from eggs, so who knows? If we had to have like a special term for it, that might have been a little bit better. So, now, moving on ahead. So, Samus wakes up, we do a tutorial with this scientist guy, and something kind of cool happens. This, I think, is a legitimately neat little nugget of foreshadowing, because we see the evil little glasses letting us know that something might be afoot, but at this point we have no idea what. And then later on, when we do find out what this was all about, we have that, oh shit, that's that! And I think that's a sign of good foreshadowing used correctly. And so, with this game and with everything that goes wrong with the writing, I want to be nice and highlight something good that they did. So, we go through our tutorial, time passes, we don't have much to do until Samus is in her ship one day and then she gets a call, and it's called that. And it's stupid. We know what this is alluding to, and the way that it's trying to communicate us is like a little bit like, so how can we get this metaphor across without slapping the audience in the face with it? Maybe if we just we didn't have a special name for the signal, and more subtly compare it to an infant's crying, with, using Samus's monologues to say something like, the sharp, piercing alarm of a distress signal immediately alerted me. We don't need to go on drilling by explaining the purpose of a distress signal, because yes, we know, it's supposed to get your attention. And, if we at least just get rid of baby's cry, it would be better. I'll let the bottle ship slide, because at least they didn't have the nerve to tell us it resembled a baby's bottle, you see. So we'll have our silly little spaceship names and shapes here. It's fine. So we do a little initial exploration of the place. It's dark and creepy and empty until we find a couple of Federation guys, including... So I'm sorry, everyone. This is a pro-Anthony panel. Despite all the nonsense in this game, I cannot and will not hate this man. In a rare instance of showing versus telling with this game, Anthony's introduction tells us a lot about him. He pushes aside his teammates to see his old buddy. He puts his hand on everyone's guns to forcefully lower their weapons himself. And there's just something really refreshing about a character like this in a series that's usually as serious like Metroid. It's so rare that we see anyone that's fun and humorous while still being totally competent. And I'm personally delighted by any man that would call Samus fucking Aran princess to her face and get away with it. In fact, it almost reminds me very much of the, most of the other hunters from Metroid Prime Corruption, where we had Rundus, who was a little bit of a jokester, and Gandrada, who, liked to play tricks and mimic Samus herself. So, love or hate this game, you definitely can't help but remember Anthony, and I feel like that alone makes him pretty worthy of existing. And then there's this guy. Obviously, a lot of fixing here is gonna... Oh, do we have a question? wouldn't call him Lord Farquaad in space, but he does. But he definitely is not what the text is trying to tell us he's supposed to be, and this is why we have to do a lot of fixing of him. Now, I don't have a problem with the idea with Samus and Adam starting off like kind of with some tension. I like this start of Samus vaguely alluding to an incident that made her decide to leave his command and, drive the two of them apart. What we don't like here is Samus's exact response to him. We don't like this melodramatic, "Oh, he pierced my heart" tone from her. She doesn't have to be totally apathetic, but the emotion she gives off, especially if we look at it in hindsight with everything else that happens later on, it's kind of bad. So let's make more of a mutual start to to the character arc between them. Have it be about the both of them learning to trust each other again. And I'll go on as we move along in the story. So, I'm getting ahead of myself. Adam keeps his squad's business to himself, but they quickly need Samus's help when they can't open a door. Yeah, this is something I like. Samus immediately gets a chance to show off in front of the guys with her unique weaponry, and this sets the beginning for a similar arc that could have played out between her and the other soldiers. Initially, Adam and everyone else besides Anthony are skeptical to her presence. They don't want her moseying in on her mission. With her reputation, they probably resent her coming to, show all of them up and overshadow them. And maybe Samus is a little full of herself in return. She doesn't say anything, but she acts as if she's better than them by just stepping up, solving the problem in a snap. She's not some ragtag bunch of good old boy soldiers. She's got this handled all by herself. Meanwhile, our boy Anthony is trying to help hype his girl from the start and smooth her over with Adam. He refers to Adam as Samus's friend to try and start them on a more amicable note. And he openly invites her to help them with the door, and even laughs when she solves their problem so quickly. And this has nothing to do with anything, but I just want to point this out. The door looks like Emmy's face. So, Samus decides to stick around to babysit the Boo Boo Army boys. Now, Adam tries to get on about authorization and stuff, but we're skipping that for now, and we're going to deal with that problem in a bit. Her decision to stick around is compounded after the mystery gang finds a dead body. A bug comes out, and one dude named Lyle freaks out enough to waste a bunch of ammo over it. But then, there is actually a lot of bugs. Adam is already authorizing his boys to use freeze guns and telling Samus to use her missiles. I think it's fine if Adam, shows off his competency as a leader, giving them orders to work together and use their different weapons. It's nice to have him show himself as a quick thinker. I think it would just be a little better if we don't make it about, Samus, I'm authorizing you to use freeze missiles. Just, Samus, they're going to freeze a thing. Just you use your missiles and then we'll break it up. Easy. And then we can show that everyone can be a team if they are working together under one competent leader. So after this, Adam has the nerve, the utter gall, to not only ask for Samus's help, but to ask for her to follow his orders to the dot. And we know this is bullshit. We do not expect our girl to just take this. If we don't want this to start with a fight, we've got to tweak Adam's tone a little bit here. Maybe just have him say something more like, looks like I'll have to ask for your cooperation, but this means you can't charge in like a loose cannon as you like to do. There could be civilians here that we need to find alive, and it won't be any easier unless we're all working cohesively. Basically, just let him be like a little bit more respectful and kind of more point out that, yeah, Samus, you're kind of destructive when you do these things on your own. So we need to have you working a little bit better with us and basically just better justify asking her to play nice. Now, being asked to cooperate brings Samus back to mission briefings with Adam from when she was a teenager. I say teenager because in the manga, we get a time skip of 11 years from when she was rescued at age 3, making her 14. And in the very next chapter, we see her in the middle of a mission with the Federation police. And without any indication from the game itself, I kind of just went into this assuming that she's supposed to be 14 in these scenes as well. Now, I think there are some actually good points in this scene that get buried by some of the silliness of it. Samus speaks of how Adam treated her versus how some of the other men in the army did. How other soldiers saw her as weaker for being a minor and a woman. I can only imagine how they might have acted with her. Samus makes a point that she better appreciated Adam's name for her because she could tell he was joking when other soldiers, might have, been seriously calling her something diminutive. I think maybe it would have been nice to have it made more clear why lady was more acceptable, perhaps, because that at least suggests a level of maturity and dignity over stuff like kid or girl or other kind of things that, army boys might have called her. Of course, Samus still needs to feel like she has to rebel against being called something special, and so what should she do? In this, she gives him a thumbs down, and that's stupid. We need to get rid of the whole thumbs thing altogether because, the army doesn't work like that. Just have the soldiers respond to a mission briefing with a standard yes, sir, and a salute. And so what can Samus do instead? I know of a much more obvious way a teenager could make a small act of rebellion against a parental figure. And so have her just call him by his name instead. Have her say, yes, Adam, instead of sir. It's classic. Samus says this was meant to be a twofold response. A way for her to joke back with him, but while still getting to act all tough and rebellious. Now, I think that's worked fine. As for other points in the flashback, I'm fine with Samus admitting that she was angry, bitter, scared, and harboring a chip on her shoulder. I think we can agree that that's kind of expected for a teenager in her situation. And I also think it's all right that she saw him as another father figure after she left Zebes. The only problem is in the unnatural, flowery language, as she tells it, but again, I don't have time to go everything word by word here, so let's just move on. So, when we return to the present, Adam finishes briefing the game on the situation. It's here that we get our first formal introduction to all the guys besides Adam and Anthony. So now's the time I talk about how our ensemble here could have been improved. Now, I think I speak for all of us when I say that we barely remember these clowns, so they need a little tweaking to be more memorable. But what should we do? Well, I think the answer can be found if we think back to Metroid's origins. That's what Other M was supposed to be about, right? Going back to the past to play the shitty games that suck ass. And in the past, what inspired Metroid? Alien, of course. Now, was there an Alien movie that had a bunch of military side characters that managed to stick with us, even if a bunch of them ended up dying? Oh, of course, it's so easy. We'll just copy Alien's characters. Why not? If Halo got to do it so blatantly, why can't we? So there we go. Now we have much better bases for our supporting soldiers. And yes, of course I'm making one of them into an additional woman, because we need one character here. We need one woman that's completely separate from the theme of motherhood we've got going on, because we're not making a Hideo Kojima game here. So after this, Adam reiterates that we're only allowed to use weapons, he says, and that he's definitely not going to let us use power bombs. Again, that point in particular is fair when we're on a ship that could have people hiding and there's more than just us going around. As for the whole authorization system in general, now look, as a reminder, I'm playing Doctor and I have to work with the system I've given. And this is basically how the game is letting us get new abilities. It's not great, but I can't like make up a new organ to do the function of a liver when a liver's not working good. So I have to just stitch up what I can. If Elthram wants to involve getting like classic power-ups throughout the game, I think it could at least be less egregious if it's not solely based on when Adam gives us permission. This whole system is pretty arbitrary, so, have us gain more abilities when Samus herself sees it fit to use them for the first time. I'll get into that later as we go along, but basically, cut out Samus's whole monologue after this, and let's just end it with her trying to like bring up the old joke again by saying, "Yes, Adam." So, we go through Sector 1, we kick some creature's ass, and then we find this thing. I'm not gonna beat around the bush here. I don't like this baby Ridley design. I'm not against seeing a juvenile Ridley clone, but he's not a damn Pokemon here. We can still make him small and deceptively cute while still looking like, like an actual baby form of the bastard we know and love. I say the best design is provided for us in the concept art for his second form. This little dude here, he makes a perfectly acceptable baby Ridley to me. I'm also pretty fine with the idea of him growing like less fur or feathers as he grows up because it's a neat kind of reverse dinosaur effect. I'm also fine with the next scene involving him when he shows up again, though Samus is just like kind of harsh on a dude for just like eating some honey. So we walk into this little building to find not Burke alone poking around under the terminal. The rest of the gang, sans not Hudson, shows up, and not Bishop informs us that the computer is fucked up. This is a nice little detail, putting doubt on not Burke when this whole plot line was kind of shoved to the wayside by the end of it. Anthony suggests everyone split up and look around the place. And what we find is a Zebesian space pirate, bearing the Federation's insignia, and not Bishop also finds a file on the computer that confirms that everyone here was studying creatures for potential bioweapons. Not Burke goes to dig deeper into the computer, and the gang splits up again. Samus comes upon a whole bunch of these robotic Zebesians. As the guys are coming to help her, she tells them to stay back, and Adam agrees to let her fight the things alone. My little tweak here is just that, perhaps to continue on with the arc I described earlier, have it so Samus insists on fighting the things alone, and have that be against Adam's wishes. He tells the gang to go and help her, but she slams a door shut or something, confident again that she's the only one that knows how to handle any space pirates. And just to, continue on that tension between what she thinks she's capable alone versus what any of them can do. And so after this, Samus hears something going on outside, and she rushes out of the building. And this, I think, can make, a good consequence for what I just described. Samus sends all the guys out alone, and, she hears something going on, and then she rushes into something head first and gets dropped by, teenage Ridley here. Whether or not Samus would ever be helplessly pinned like this isn't so much of a concern of mine, because this just exists to, have the moment of first person, fighting the thing off. It's fun, so whatever. I'll let you have this mini game moment. After getting herself into this bit of trouble, now the troopers get to come and help her out and prove themselves capable fighters as well. My main tweak was just maybe more than just having Anthony shooting him off with his big old railgun. Maybe while he was charging that up, the other guys could have at least been attempting to help out, or just keeping Ridley from making a killing blow or something like that. Because this is kind of our only chance to have any kind of conclusion with, these guys proving themselves before they all get chopped off one by one. So we gotta do something here. Now, so skipping forward a bit, we find the dead body of a not Hudson and the shed skin of Lil Ridley. Adam tells us to follow its path to Sector 3, and that building we were just in explodes for some reason. So, yeah, the lava section. We didn't like it. We didn't like this contrived hell run because Daddy Adam didn't say we could put on our Varia suit. Running through a hot section shouldn't be a requirement in a vanilla Metroid game. That's the kind of shit Kaizo Super Metroid runners do just to feel something. This right here is a perfect time for Samus to activate her own ability in direct defiance of Adam. Let's think back to Fusion, when Adam the computer told her that she had no business being in hot areas and that we should just turn back around if we were into one before we get the Varia suit. Sei gives her the same aura here, and that she doesn't need to be poking around like down deep into Sector 3, but she just ignores him in order to keep following the path of that creature. And then she just turns on her own Varia suit, and then we can just go through this hot section like normal, and then we can better enjoy like this mini boss and then the big boss that we get up ahead, because those sections were kind of cool actually. So moving along, we're told to go to Sector 2, and in the case of our story, this could be Adam kind of punishing us for going against what he said and like going deeper than necessary into the battleship. And so he sends us to go somewhere else in order to look for survivors instead. The first thing we find is a big animal corpse with signs of Metroid predation, which sure is wacky considering we're in a very cold area, and most importantly, Metroids are supposed to be extinct, guys. We then find another frozen dead body, this one being not Bishop, and hey, then we do actually find a survivor, but she's pretty afraid of Samus because she's seen the Federation troops killing each other. To immediately confirm her story, a big aliens reference shows up to kill the both of us, and Samus can see one of the soldiers piloting it. So we fight it, we bring it down, and then we kind of just like leave it and not go to see like who's piloting the thing. So, we'll have to tweak that a bit. The game already gives us like a fake out moment where it starts moving again when we first start to approach it. So maybe at least like we could have it crash through a wall and, get away from us to explain that, we can't go revealing the big plot twist quite yet. So now we know that there's a traitor, an imposter, or whatever you want to call it, among us, as long as we don't call it the deleter, because that sounds stupid. Calling it simply the assassin or the imposter or even the double agent could have been just fine. So Samus is once again directed back to Sector 3 because M has realized that the sound of Ridley's howling is driving everything else on the ship into a frenzy. As she makes her way, Samus begins putting the whole plot together. After shit went wrong on the illegal bioweapon Nightmare ship, the Federation wanted to clean up their mess with a secret assassin that would kill everyone that could blab their big secret. Even if this plotline didn't get like a super satisfying conclusion, I wouldn't get rid of it. It reminds me very much of Ash from Alien, the secret plant of the company sent to ensure their main goals fulfilled by any means necessary, especially murder. Before we get to play again, we're shown our imposter kicking some poor bastard into the lava, and by process of elimination, this has to be our poor not Vasquez. So we go along, fight some more creatures, and then we come upon Anthony being attacked. This is another case where Samus should just activate her own weapon in response to the situation. So we turn on the grapple beam ourselves, we fight the thing off, and Anthony tells us that Adam had sent the whole team to meet there, but he's the only one to show up. I also just want to highlight this little line here because, again, it's really these like little touches with Anthony that make him stand out against everyone else that didn't get to show nearly as much personality as he did. So Anthony then prods us on how we're feeling about Adam. And knowing, since he's part of their shared history, I think it's fair for him to be checking up with her about this. And this is when we finally learned the incident that made Samus choose to leave the Federation. A decision that wasn't even explained in the manga. We see that, years ago, Adam had to leave his brother Ian to die on an exploding ship in order to ensure the survival of the passengers they came to rescue. Samus begged Adam to let her go and just let her give her a chance to try and rescue him. but he ordered her to stay put because it would have been too great a risk to send anybody out there. Frankly, I think this is a fine reason for Samus to want to strike it solo. After being forced to let Ian die, she never again wanted to wait for anyone's permission to save someone. And this also gives this moment in Fusion here some new context, because it seems now like in the future, Adam the computer is bitterly looking back on what he did to Ian and remembering why he was afraid to risk Samus's life in the first place. And I also think it's fair for Samus in the future to have forgiven him for that decision as an adult and feel remorse for making it so much more difficult for him by questioning it. And now even this line here in the bottom right can serve as a nod to Ian in retrospect. But anyway, so this next line is, I think, feels like the one time they really got it right with Samus. The way they ultimately word it can be a bit confusing, but my interpretation is this. If something like what happened with Ian were to happen again, Samus would still want to do the impossible and save him. And that is Samus. Our girl does do the impossible, and she goes to insane lengths to save everyone. She single-handedly wipes out planetary armies. She travels between dimensions to defeat an eldritch horror and save a species that she only just met. And yes, fuck you and your frames. She saves the animals when the planet is gonna blow to Kingdom Come. That is the Samus Aran we know and love. So, unfortunately, here we are, folks. Right after that scene, or at least as far as the story goes, we get to this part. After we're briefly tricked into thinking Anthony might be about to kill us, we come here. Someone dab my fucking forehead, because I'm taking my scalpel to some major arteries here. When fans backlash against Samus's meltdown in the face of Ridley, some tried to argue that PTSD doesn't have to make sense. The shock of seeing Ridley back after she thought for sure he was dead this time was too much. But we saw Samus triumph over the nightmare from her childhood long ago, again and again, and having her scared now? It doesn't feel right. And they want to take this victory from Samus for what? I think a proper flashback might have been more appreciated. I missed something. For what? To finally nod to an American audience what happened to her as a child? And yes, again, a proper flashback might have been more appreciated, because if you didn't read the manga, you wouldn't know how to interpret this. You might think that the only way you can see this or read this is that the sight of Ridley reduces Samus to a scared little girl. And that's ridiculous. It does a great disservice to her character, and I think it's completely unfair to erase this moment of triumph to just try and make her look more fragile when the rest of this game is already doing that. It's terrible. So we're gonna change that. Oh, shit. Oh, you're right. Oh, some of my notes are missing. Okay, well, so I've talked a lot about the problem, and now I've got to present a solution. Perhaps what we might expect for Samus if she's going to be overwhelmed by an emotion that kind of clouds her judgment, have it not be terror, but, blind rage because she's sick of this guy. Have her rush in and repeat the mistake from earlier when she saw him as a teenager. She rushes in head first, doesn't stop to think, and she immediately gets grabbed and put into danger. Anthony, seeing his friend in peril, then just tries to come in and help her out. But as a result, he gets knocked off the platform, and supposedly sent to his death. Samus, after, not listening to Adam trying to reach her in her communications and not stopping Anthony in time, finally is shaken back to why she needs to think more clearly. And then we get our proper boss fight. And this time, we're going to kill him too. Because we do not need to let Ridley escape Samus this time, just so we can have his body to become, Metroid food for Metroid Fusion. Let's just let her have this kill. So, after all that, Samus can no longer get into contact with Adam, and we spot someone in Federation armor. We follow him, but then they deactivate a bridge. In this point in the game, it's the first time that Samus finally rebels against Adam and turns her own abilities on. But, now in this version, it's just another instance of her doing that. So, we just do it without Adam's permission and cross the gap with our screw attack. And then finally, we get properly introduced to Madeline Bergman, who explains to us what was really going down on the ship. I may be alone in this, but I very much enjoy the whole plot of a cloned AI of Mother Brain lying to our face. I think it's fun. This bitch has the nerve to look us in the face and tell us all about herself, the Metroid Sector Zero, getting the DNA from Samus's suit, and then she even lies and tries to tell Adam, or tries to tell us that Adam was the one responsible for everything. It's phenomenal gaslight, gatekeeping, girl bossing. I do think, though, that something should have been changed with her. I think a Mother Brain clone is squandered. She doesn't get to remember and speak directly to Samus. So here's what I'm thinking. The moment she sees Samus, she remembered everything between them and then just kept playing her as she did. I don't care if it makes sense because, she's a video game supercomputer. We can do what we want. Because for me, a great part of the Metroid manga was Mother Brain's and Samus's interactions. And, this game is all about motherhood. Let's really bring in the original mother of the franchise. And you know what? I'm pretty fine with the scene ending with her killing the imposter because, Mother Brain deserves one direct murder as a treat. So while fighting some bosses along the way, we make our way to the entrance of Sector Zero, and we're stopped by a little baby Metroid. Samus thinks back to the baby she found on SR-388, and yet it appears as though she's about to kill it. And I don't really think that's the correct response. Because I don't want to believe that Samus could so easily have the heart to destroy something that reminds her of the creature that saved her life. The baby's Metroid's death, I don't know about y'all, but it fucked me up. To this day, I can't hear Mothra's cry without getting a little sad. And when I encounter Metroids in other games, especially the Prime games, I do everything I can just to run past them because I just think of the little baby. And I just think, no, I don't want to hurt them. Just let me go past you guys. And so if I get that emotional over these things, I like to think Samus would have had her perception of these creatures entirely changed as well. So I would like to see her try and reach out her hand one more time. And then it comes to attack her, and then Adam has to freeze it for her. Speaking of Adam, this is where I do need to this is another point where I need to make some drastic changes. I'm transplanting a new heart right here because this is supposed to be the emotional high point of the whole thing, and they completely dropped the ball. First of all, Adam isn't shooting Samus. I hate this scene for making her so weak compared to him. Adam is going to talk to her like a fucking equal. But even more heinous than that, this game has the nerve to directly ask Samus, what'd she do if something like what happened with Ian happened again? And then it once again denies her the choice to act all over again. She has to stand back and pant and be weak and watch the eldest Malkovich die. Despite her entreaty to finally trust her, Adam says no and makes himself a martyr instead. Not this time, guys. This isn't the same Samus that he knows. She's not some kid with a chip on her shoulder having to obey her officer's command. She's a seasoned warrior, a hero. She does the impossible, and most importantly, she doesn't have to ask anyone to do so. So what will we do about Sector Zero? Well, let's really bend the rules here and use the one weapon we were told we'd never be allowed to use. Let Samus speed boost into Sector Zero, plant a power bomb, and shine Spark right back to Adam's side, where he can stare in awe at the woman he dared to doubt as a whole chunk of the ship explodes behind her. And for having fun, let's have Samus make that same zero-G race out of the section. Where's my... Oh, there we go. Yeah, out of the section while towing Adam with one hand. Because, who are you to say that she wouldn't be strong enough to just carry that entire man with one arm? Now, obviously, even after saving Adam, we can't play a proper Metroid game with a companion. So after he's safe, we can have them two split up for a bit, with Samus heading for a location Adam says should have a survivor. Along the way, we find Not Burke's body. And a lot of people think that the whole thread with him was never really answered, but I don't know. I think you can put together that he was the imposter and he got killed when he approached MB. So I'm leaving that. And remember, there's no Ridley body to find, so we're just moving on. What's more important is when we do find that survivor. She's so freaked out by Samus that she straight sicks a Queen Metroid on us. And, now it's boss time. But wait. Here's another change I have to make. Going back to the earlier point about Samus with the wanting to spare the baby Metroid she came across. Because, remember, this is still right after Super Metroid, which was right after Metroid 2. And everything that happened with the baby Metroid is still fresh in her mind. She fought the first queen relatively recently. And the thing about that queen is that was the baby's real mother all along. And Samus just killed her. Samus made that baby into an orphan, and the very last of its kind, and then she couldn't bring herself to finish the job. Now, it's one thing to destroy the, indestructible, science-enhanced, unfreezable Metroids in Sector Zero, but is it so wrong to think that in light of what happened with the real mother of our precious baby Metroid, maybe that Samus might once again show some mercy? So, now, don't worry. I'm going to let us still have our boss fight, and basically the only thing I want to have different is just that instead of going inside of it and blowing it up from the inside in a horrible death, maybe when the ship is brought to a halt and it falls over, Samus pities this poor creature, and for once, we just end the boss by going around it. So, we catch up with the woman, who reveals herself to be the actual Madeline Bergman, and the blonde bitch we spoke to earlier was the MB AI in an android body. Madeline gives us her whole backstory, and I'm pretty fine with the classic robot girl goes nuts when threatened with reprogramming thing as the start to all this. Especially because, that's pretty on track with Mother Brain's personality in the manga. Because she hates being betrayed or being called defective in any way. And I'm also pretty intrigued with the idea of MB having a human body in an attempt to recreate Samus's bond with the baby. That's neat. So, now, when I said that her whole going nuts with the threat of reprogramming thing is a start, here's what I mean. Madeline herself makes a statement about how she's targeting more than just the researchers of the bottle ship for an attack. So here's what I'm thinking. Remember my earlier idea about Mother Brain remembering everything when she first saw Samus? What if that included her original plan leading up to the OG Metroid of wiping out everything and starting fresh so that she could rule everything because she is, the perfect supercomputer, obviously the one to be in charge. So, suddenly Madeline and Samus find themselves confronted by MB with a freeze gun. I don't mind her beginning her speech here with "I was not wrong," because that tracks for Mother Brain's character, insisting that she knows the right answer to everything. I would, however, strike the generic, monotonous way she goes about bringing judgment to humanity and all that. And most importantly, I would have her give a personal greeting to Samus. Because basically at this moment, this should be when she gives her big villain speech and lets Samus know that she's really back. Meanwhile, Malin speaks to her as if she's still the Melissa she knows. Here, the removal of that hair clip is proof that the daughter Madeline loved is gone and replaced by a mother instead. A really toxic, shitty mother. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. At this point, MB is suddenly frozen from off-screen, and the new cavalry of Federation soldiers show up. She unfreezes, wakes some more monsters to kick their shin, and then the game denies you the chance to take her out yourself once again, and lets the soldiers turn her into Swiss cheese. Is that satisfying to you? I say nay. So, here's what I propose instead. She's frozen once by the troopers who rush in. At this point, Adam returns to us after hearing all the commotion. She unfreezes and unleashes maybe like just one or two of those, big bug things to come fuck us up. Adam joins in the fight to take the things down. And then we do the thing where we lock onto MB. Madeline weeps over her dead body. Or Madeline freezes her. Then she's shot to shit by the other soldiers. Madeline weeps over MB's body, still clinging to the memory of her robot daughter. But the truth is that the android body is just a shell of MB's true self. And they all realize it's not really over yet when more monsters start to wake up. Adam and Samus move to protect Madeline together, and they realize that Mother Brain must still exist, and the MB body is just a piece of her. Now is when Adam tells us to leave without him and go ahead, because now this is a foe that only Samus can face. So, here's what it comes down to. This fan art is, once again, it's just highlighting a piece of fan art that I really like, especially with the title, because, it really ties the whole thing that I'm thinking. Because, the whole theme of this game is motherhood, right? The subtitle is just Mother Rearranged, so I think we need a proper fight with our original mother here. Mother Brain has tried to assert herself as Samus's own mother in the manga. In fact, the manga reveals that Samus would really have had a problem with this whole idea of turning different life forms into weapons. And so at this point, she would have a lot of anger building up. So we find our way back to Mother Brain's true form. And, we can have it be a classic brain in a tank, but just gotta still be a little bit different from how we've seen her before. Let me divert you for a second to Phantoon here, who's the actual final boss of the game. Now, fun fact about Phantoon is that his description for him in the original Japanese Super Metroid manual actually says this. And so, if we take his appearance here in this game and apply this description, it has some interesting implications. So let's say he was and still is supposed to be a projection of Mother Brain's consciousness. Well, he certainly got a growth spurt from, when we last saw him. So if we all consider that Phantoon's size could be relative to Mother Brain's size and power, then in this game she might be something more like... Yeah. Have you all seen this art before? This is something, from a big collection of cut content from the Prime games, and this was for an idea that floated around during the development of Metroid Prime 1. So, she was the original big bad of this series, and it's been some time since we saw her. We almost got a chance back in Prime, and then, once again, we were denied another fight with her here in Other M. Well, I'm fixing that. So... Oh, yes. Right, sorry. My notes are a little bit screwy. Now, so, again, we gotta fix this and have a proper confrontation with our mother. Because, again, that's what Other M is all about. Dealing with motherhood. And in this case, we're gonna deal with poor examples of motherhood. Now, sorry, folks. Because, in just the last game that came out, we had to deal with our shitty father, right? And he wanted to do the same thing, of just turn Samus into his little personal weapon. And you know how that game ended, right? We killed him! So let's do it here. And in fact, let's have history repeat one more time by having the Queen Metroid that we spared earlier come back to help us, like in Samus Returns here with the baby. Now, the final boss itself would how it would all work is beyond my specialty because again I don't know gameplay, but we fight and destroy Mother Brain for good. Samus returns to find the bug monsters back asleep, the soldiers recovering, Madeline all right, but Adam is dead. I know it might be controversial to kill him now, but I did have to kill him at some point because I can't go and change fusion while I'm at this. This at least creates a little bit of suspense because you have to ask yourself whether he was killed by the monsters or one of the Federation soldiers while Samus wasn't around to protect him. And, now it makes his brain much easier to copy into a computer. From here, things can kind of play out as they did originally. Slimy chairman shows up and tries to tell Samus what to do. Our best buddy Anthony reveals that he didn't die at all, and we get to take Madeline home. I'm cutting out all of Samus's philosophizing over whether or not MB was evil or just misunderstood, since, in this time, we know damn well that she was a bitch. We fly through space, we think of Adam as we look upon the sunset, so on and so forth. But one thing, just one more thing. When Anthony shows up to say goodbye to Samus, he does say one thing different at the very end. To acknowledge Samus's growth and maturity from the kid he knew in the army, he finally calls her queen instead of princess. Thank you and good night. Oh, yeah, I know that there's but extra stuff. I know that we go into to find Adam's helmet. That's fine. We can keep our extra mission to clean up everything. We can even have our little self-destruct sequence in our silly little Zero suit. It's fine. It's fun. Also, Phantoon can stay because that's a fun boss fight. I have no notes there. Good night. Does anyone have any questions or comments or feedback? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, the remakes obviously that doesn't make additional times, but it is it's still very much canon that we've fought him several times at this point. And one thing I've always thought is that in real life things like that don't follow any rules and don't have to be consistent. But, in a work of fiction, sometimes you can't really capture that kind of inconsistency in life without the audience kind of just reading it as wrong. So that's how I always thought of it. Yes? I definitely think that's a part of it. The voice acting for Samus obviously leaves a lot to be desired, and I'm not putting that on the voice actress at all. I think she was given a direction to deliver the lines as she did, and, it was just bad direction. So definitely, more emotion, a little more liveliness to Samus in general could have also helped. There's a whole video on YouTube also about how there's kind of nuance to the translation that gets lost. Yeah, that's a good one. So it's definitely a lot of little tweaks in wording or delivery and things that could have made a whole big difference to how this whole story came off. Yes. Yeah, you can find English translation of the manga on the oldest Metroid fan site ever, which is Metroid Database. They have a whole section of comics and translated manga that you should read. Yeah, definitely recommend the manga because it still seems very much that Nintendo is at least like using parts of it to be canon. And it's kind of the only place where you can still figure out like what exactly happened to Samus when she was a kid, because they won't just tell us already. Even when they're making a game about the past of Samus and her origins, they won't just tell us, American audience, us laymen who don't know that there's a Metroid fan site with all this stuff that never made it to the States.
So like Nintendo's super stingy about like people looking around the game, right? And I think they care about mangas.
Oh god, I don't remember the exact origins of this manga, but I do know that it was definitely like, I think it was like released in Nintendo magazines or something, but it is like very much like official. It's not like a fan manga by any means. It was just like something that was only released like online, I think, or only released like in Japan publications. I don't remember the exact origins, but it is very much like a canonical, or at least like an official story that was released around the time of Zero Mission. Yes.
Have you seen on Twitter that people are reappreciating Metroid Dread?
Oh yeah, no, I felt very good to see how she is in Dread, especially because like there's I think like one thing that like this game and like other people can miss is that Sam is not like speaking a lot, or like not having like telling us much does not show like a lack of character. The reason that Other M bothers us is because we do have an idea of Samus's character, and that in this game went against it, because she shows who she is in a lot of her actions in the games, like particularly in like the Prime games. I mentioned going through the the different dimensions to save a species she just met, because really Prime 2 is kind of just like one of the best showcases of like the kind of person she is, because again, she shows up on Aether for like something totally unrelated. She's just sent there to like figure out what happened to the Federation soldiers that disappeared, but then she finds out about the Luminoth and the Aang and the peril that they're in. And so she was only like, they say at the beginning of the game like what her contract is, what her mission is, and says that that's what she's going to be paid for. So that like everything that she does in the game from that point is that's not something she's going to be paid for. And you never really you don't really get any sense that the Lumoth gave her anything, because like even the stuff that she gets throughout the game, you see that like she gives the light suit back because she's back to her Varia suit. So basically she does all of that for nothing. And even when when she's done and she goes to leave and they're all bowing to her, she just gives a goodbye, because she's not doing it for the praise or the money or the anything. She's doing it because she doesn't want to let these guys die. And so there's a lot of things that Samus can say without saying anything. And so I really loved in Dread just having her, having her one line be just like, I'll finish this. Now, not to say that like I don't want Samus to speak ever again. I think like, some more dialogue is still fine. It's just you gotta be careful with her. Yeah, you gotta make her words count. Does that answer your question? I kind of went on a whole tangent. Okay.
How do you feel about Samus like talking? Because like we know we have Nintendo characters like Ness and Link who don't talk.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, with Link, he kind of is like more talking lately, because now we have like the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom games where it's like he's giving responses, and like certainly like fans can interpret that like he would maybe he's not saying those responses aloud, and that's fine, but he is at least like communicating.
Like in what's called like in the Face of Evil one of Gamelon and the
Those aren't canon, so we don't have to worry about that. But I mean, but still, yeah, like in the likes of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, he is like communicating, and so like I'm fine with that, and I just said I'm fine with Samus talking. I definitely don't need like a strong silent protagonist because whether like through direct communications to another person or like just through their actions, a character can still say a lot about themselves. But yeah, and I think, and yeah, I think I'd be fine with Samus talking, especially if if there are like other characters for her to talk to, like perhaps in Prime 4 or something or other. But yeah, I definitely am not. I'm definitely not against Samus having something to say now and then.
I like her super long monologues on Fusion. Because, like, I feel like that's a nice in between, but I've also heard people complain about them.
Um, Yeah, I do think that might be like yeah, like in retrospect, after Other M, like her monologuing at all like just felt wrong. But I don't know, and obviously it works because there's a lot that in Fusion that the game has to tell us, and and it's a Game Boy game, so it can only just tell us in text. So I think like the monologues in that game work all right. I think it is just like once again like just kind of more wisely using something like that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just make Samus's words count. That's all. Bye.